Hello everybody and welcome to our second video in the all-in-one series for the CCIE version 5 written and lab exam. In this video I'm going to cover some key topics that I think are going to help us as we open the doors to the options that are out there for studying and some of the things that I do in preparation for my written exam, which I'm hoping to take when it becomes available in March. As far as I know, the last time I checked, it still was not able to be scheduled. That would be the new CCIE written version 5. You can take the version 4 all day long, written and lab. However, the new version 5 is still not available to take, and it's January 21st. And very cold where I'm from, in the Milwaukee area. That would be Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the ways you can navigate Cisco's website to try to find different things in documentation regarding an issue you might be running into or potentially trying to get more research done. Obviously, Google is a great place to start if you don't already use it. I'm on Google hourly, to be honest with you. So what we're going to look at is some of the different things you can do to benefit yourself when it comes to trying to figure out where things are at. Now, as I've mentioned, I have not sat for any lab or written exams, so I'm only going based on what other instructors have talked about and some training that I've received that points to what you're going to see when you open up the web browser to go to the documentation site. Now, the reason why the CCIE, any CCIE lab, is extremely difficult is because of the fact, and this comes out of the mouth of a proctor that I talked to, the reason they make it so difficult is to give you the answers. Well, what do you mean, how do they give you the answers? Well, you have the ability to use the documentation. The reason why they give you the opportunity to use documentation is because they're expecting you to come in with a strong core knowledge base. So layer 2 switching, layer 3 routing, but based on the instructors that I've had, the stuff that they're not going to expect, well, you're supposed to be expected to be an expert in everything. But the idea behind the other things like services, like quality of service, anything that's an enhancement to a core technology. So gateway redundancy, first hop redundancy, NHRP, security, anything like that, anything that is not required, any non-core task is a good way to put it. Those particular items are going to be something that you're supposed to know what they are, so obviously know what HSRP is, know what VRRP is, know what GLBP is, but you don't necessarily have to be an expert in how to configure them. Well, in some cases it would be a good idea. I would be really good at configuring pretty much all of them. At least know how to implement all of them, how to set up multiple group numbers and things like that. But regardless of which direction you decide to take, ultimately what you're going to end up circling back and needing to know is your core tasks. What we're going to focus on when it comes to documentation findings and learning how to navigate it is what you're going to see once you get into the lab. So, obviously here I'm at Cisco's main website. This is their homepage. As you can see, homepage. Now, I frequent Cisco's website 10-15 times a day. Especially when I'm studying, I'm on the documentation site. So one of the first things you can do, I'm going to scroll down here, is you can click on documentation, and I'm going to middle mouse button and open up another tab. You can do that, or you can click on select your product. Now let me point to this before I click on this tab. Let me click right here. Now I bookmarked the select your product tab. So now if you notice right here when I highlight it, it says select your product or technology, configure Cisco systems. Click on here. That right there is going to be the same page you get if you click right here. Same page. So regardless of how you get there, it's going to be the same thing. I have this tabbed just because it's easier for me to just click on. Now, once you're here, assuming you go to the scroll at the bottom and you grab the documentation tab or something else, you have some options right here that you can do. You can type this in. You're not going to have this option as far as I understand. You're going to have the ability to search the documentation. So you click on products, Cisco iOS and NXOS software, which the NXOS is for the Nexus platform. You click on that. Then you're brought up to all the different iOS versions that are out there. So different platform versions, like for instance, you would have Cisco iOS, XE, XR, NXOS. These would be equivalent to being on like iOS versus maybe I can't even equate because I don't know really the differences between them. I just know Cisco iOS is the one I would click on. Now, some of the things that you can do here, if you're studying for the version 4, 12.4 is the family you're going to want to be under. For the version 5, you're going to want to be under 15 M&T because they state that you're going to want to be studying 15T. So we're going to click there. Now, I only have 15.2 available to myself, but 15.3 is what you're going to get tested on. So obviously we're going to click on 15.3. So 15.3 is going to get loaded up. As you can see, they're purpled out, so we're going to be... I've clicked on both of these before. So we're going to click on certification guides. Configuration guides, listen to me. I'm a certification nut. As you can see, most of these links are purpled out. Why is that? Well, because I've clicked on them to download and look at the documentation. So the first thing that I did was I went through each tab to figure out what it was that I might need to download to prepare for the lab. Well, one of the first things I did was I came down here to FHRP. I thought it was high availability at first, but then I realized FHRP, first hop redundancy protocols. So you click on this guy, brings up a new tab, and then you got all these options here for HSRP, IRDP, which is the predecessor to HSRP, and Internet Router. I don't really remember what that stands for. But you got these options here. What I did is I just downloaded the complete book. So I downloaded the PDF. I did that for a majority of these. So I came down here and I downloaded, I think, every one of these guys. And then if you see library, that means that there's going to be subcategories below this. So you click on this guy, then you're going to have all these options. So you're going to have PIM, IGMP, multicast FIB for layer 2 multicast, multicast VPNs for running with MPLS and IPsec, or like GRE and things of that nature. LSM, which is going to be multicast listener discovery. And then we have some resiliency services, optimization, and legacy technologies. I don't know how I've got them downloaded. I don't know how applicable they're going to be to the actual lab, but that's one thing that I would do is know how to search through here. So this is a configuration guide. So for instance, let's say we're having to figure out how to we're worried about configuring retransmission limits in OSPF. So we'd click on here, and it would bring this up to this particular feature set. It would tell you the release that this software feature was implemented in, and then it would tell you about it. So it could be a feature overview. And so what it would tell you then is the benefit. The limits retransmission command provides a backwards compatibility for previous or other releases of Cisco iOS and other routers that do not have this feature. Restrictions to it does not apply for update packets on NBMA or point-to-multipoint direct circuits. So these are the supported platforms. It is fortunately supported on the platform we're going to work on, which is the 7200 and the 3725. So we're going to use a combination of both. Now you come down here a little further, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about it. And the idea behind this is you're going to have router OSPF with the process ID, then you're going to have limit retransmissions for direct connect, maximum number, and disable non-direct connect, maximum number, disable. So some of these are going to be giving you the ability to enable this particular feature and that's how you would do this. So if you don't know how to configure this, this is how you would do it. So if you do a question mark, you may not see the limit command. So this is how you would go in there and actually do it. So that's the idea behind being able to drill down to a particular feature. Now, if you don't know what the feature is, then you're going to have to do a little bit of digging. I would recommend you becoming fairly competent with being able to navigate the documentation site. It's going to be something that you're going to need to know when you get to the lab. Now, what I did, I downloaded the book. And so I went through each one of these guys and I started taking things out. I put them into a big OneNote document. And the OneNote document, I'm going through all the routing protocols, PIM, multicast, security, quality of service, all these different features and capabilities, so it's all in one compact area, so that when we actually get into it, I can have the PDF already downloaded, pull the stuff out of the PDF that is applicable, and then at the same time have the web browser open so that I can actually dive down and show you where to find it. Because knowing where it's at is going to be a big deal. So that's the configuration guide. Now there are command references, and we'll have to find that. So we click back here. We're going to be at reference guides. So command references. Now we're the same train, 15.3, command references. So all I did was I went back to tabbed back to configure, because we were here in the configuration guides. Click on reference guides. It's going to bring you to this, where command references, and then if you know what you're looking for, then it's going to be that much easier. So, for instance, OSPF command reference. Click on that guy. Then you can say, okay, what is it that I think I need to do? You can either download the entire book, or you can come over here and say retransmissions. So we'll limit retransmissions. Should be, yeah. Click on this guy, and then you're going to get all the commands that are potentially available in the iOS image underneath the router command, potentially. So here we have limit retransmissions, and you click on this guy, and then it's going to come down here, and it's going to modify the number of retransmissions of database exchange and update packets for both demand and non-demand circuits. Use the limit retransmissions command in router configuration mode to reset the number of retransmissions back to the default of 24. Use the no in the form of the command. Now, the nice thing I like about the command reference is not only does it give you the command specific examples. So it says limit retransmissions demand circuit, and if you don't know what a demand circuit is, look it up. It's going to be one of those things where you'd have to dig into it and figure out what's going on. So these will be the commands, and then demand circuit retransmissions, the maximum number. So the range is going to be an 8-bit value or 1 byte, and then non-DC for non-demand circuits and disable. Command default, which is nice, it tells you that maximum number of retransmissions is 24, and this is how you would do this under the router configuration and the address family. The reason why this is a really good idea is because of the fact of when you're dealing with OSPF v3, you might be dealing with this with IPv6 and address family configuration. This is where you're going to have to configure it. So address family configuration, and then you type in the information down there. Now the nice thing about this is it gives you the usage guidelines and the ability to go into the address family. So address family IPv4 unicast, or say IPv6 multicast, if that was what was going on. So the usage guidelines, what specific information is there to it, and then this command can be used in router configuration mode and address family. This command is also applicable for both OSPF and OSPF v3 protocols. So that's going to be a big thing when you're going through. I'm going to be going back and forth between the configuration guide and the command references because both are applicable. And then we have the following example, and enable config T router. Now this is one thing that I really like about what Cisco's doing. And it says right here router OSPF, which is going to be OSPF v2, okay? And then you have OSPF v3. Now I mentioned in the previous video where OSPF v3 doesn't mean solely IPv6. It means it can run OSPF IPv4, v2, or v3. So you can use both, and that's the nice thing about it. So if you're told that there's too many retransmissions, or whatever the case may be, or filter the amount of retransmissions back to anything below the default. So if you don't know what the default is of 24, you're going to need to go back and figure that out. So you might have to go, okay, well, what's the default? So that's why it's, in my opinion, you should know every detail about the protocol. If you're going to be an expert or a CCIE, you should be able to know. Well, if somebody asks you, well, what is the retransmissions default limit in OSPF v3? And you can be like 24. And they're like, that could be one of those kind of smarty pants. Let's see if this guy knows this question, knows the answer to this. This is the type of information that you should be able to pull off the top of your head. So, and here we have a situation where it's limit retransmissions on demand circuits of 10, non-demand circuits of 20. So, and then we have router OSPF, and then it's going to keep going because of the fact that we are in the configuration, the command references. So limit retransmissions is going to be that type of, the command reference, I should say, is going to give you a PDF, and I would definitely know how to navigate to this. So not only am I going to be using the PDF that I've downloaded, I'm also going to use the what do you call it? I forgot, I lost my train of thought. How bad is that? I'm also going to use the documentation site because that's what you're going to have access to in the lab exam. But see, that's the benefit of using both, because the fact that if one kind of leaves you hanging or you don't quite get it, the command reference is going to be there to fill in, and vice versa. The command reference might be telling you what you need to do, but you might want the backstory in the configuration guide. So one half does the other. So if you go to the configuration guide and you get to go, oh, okay, all right, cool, and then you go back and you're like, I still don't get it. You know, there's times where I'm watching the video that you can tell the instructor's trying to drive a point home, and you're like, not getting it, man. Just not getting it. And then you go back and look at this and be like, oh, light bulb goes on, and you get it. Like, oh, now I can train you on this because I know how it works. So that's the idea behind it. It's actually a very cool concept. Yeah. Right to the top here. And stop. So I would recommend downloading the command references as well as downloading the configuration guide, because then you can go through the step by step and go, okay, what is link local signaling? So you'll be able to figure out what that is and how it's used in the different iOS images that it was, or iOS releases, I should say, or what it was, and then what it does. And then it's going to give you an example. So it's a great feature to know how to do this, because the fact of, if you know what it is, know how it works, and you can read the question inside of the test and be like, okay, that sounds like this might be the issue. You can, and then if you're not sure, you can always check the command reference and the configuration guide, and that might be the you could be like, well, I'm not 100% sure. It could be two different things. So for one, like right here, we have no IP directed broadcast. I just dropped my pen again. It could say implement, and I'm just going off on a whim here. I'm not even sure if this is actually going to be legitimate, but for the sake of argument, implement a command that underneath the interface configuration that would prevent a Smurf attack on the connected interface. Well, if you don't know what a Smurf attack is, then you'd have a hard time knowing that. So, which no IP directed broadcast, which basically would prevent you. Now, this is just basically, I'm just reading this because it's right there in front of me, and I happen to just study my CCNA security exam. What this basically would prevent is, whenever you go onto a router and you type in ping and all 255s, which is the all broadcast IP address. When you're doing that, you'll get responses from any directly connected neighbor, right? Well, what the Smurf attack is doing is you would go to a local subnet and you would ping the broadcast IP address for that subnet. So if you're on the 192.168.1.0/24, you would ping that IP address's broadcast IP. So if it's going to be 192.168.1.255, then you ping that IP address, and then anybody that's on that subnet that's listening on the broadcast, you get a response from them. So then you could determine who's there and then potentially do a denial of service. So it gives you the flexibility to look at different things. So different attacks are going to have different ways of being implemented. So definitely download this, check it out, make sure you understand what's being asked of you, because that's going to be something that definitely helps you out long term, and some of the things that you're going to be able to see potentially ahead. Because if you know what the questions or what potential questions you might see, or just by reading a question and what they're trying to tell you or ask you to do, you can, going based on your studies, if you study properly and thoroughly enough, you should be able to go in and go, okay, well, if they're asking me that, I only know a couple different commands that it could potentially be, so then that'll help you narrow down what it could potentially be, and then use the documentation to zero in on maybe one specific command that matches the closest to what they're asking, which at the same time would be the most applicable and most valid solution for the answer, or for the solution. So if you can give them a valid solution in a matter of just a couple of seconds, maybe a minute to go find the config if you're not 100% sure as to what it is, that's going to make you that much more confident in the lab. Because as Brian McGann and Brian Dennis have both said, if you know what each command does, its underlying, the reason why it's there and what it does and how it might affect something else, that when you're in the lab exam and you're not 100% sure as to what's going on, you can quickly go to the command reference and click on a particular command and go, okay, I know why that's there, and something to fix it. So we have like the neighbor OSPF and database filter all out. Commands that you may not see on a daily basis is stuff you're going to want to study. Obviously, the network network and then putting your network statement in, you've known that since the CCN days. So I would be checking out like fast reroute per prefix. What does that do? What is the usage guidelines for this? And and then how it works, and put it into play. See how it actually operates. That's the whole idea of labbing, is to test each particular feature, see how it works. Because then when you get to the lab, you're not going to be caught off guard. Like I mentioned a minute ago, if you know what each command does, and then you look at a particular task in the lab or in a practice exam, you're not going to be freaking out and going, I don't know. You can't raise your hand and ask the proctor, hey, what would you do for this? They're not going to answer that question. They're going to be like, pick the solution that fit pick the solution that you feel answers the question, or something to that effect. Choose the best answer that you think is applicable. Stuff like that. They're not going to tell you the answer. You might be able to say, well, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking here. Do you want me to do this or this? And they'll go, maybe the first one. Or based on the way you word the question to them, they can respond to you applicably. Because if you ask them a question and the way that you word the question sounds like you know what you're talking about, but you're not sure which way they want you to go, because sometimes I've seen some of the wording in some of the practice exams, going through like the volume 2 workbook. Some of them I'm like, I'm not really sure. So it could be a couple different ones. So this gives you the ability to go in there and check things out. And so, like for instance, this IP OSPF fast reroute per prefix command, candidate protection disabled. If you come down here, release 15.1. So these are things that we're going to be able to check out and go from there. So one thing that I would do, and actually if we come up here. This is going to give us I believe the index is going to give us all of them. Oh no. Yes, it'll give us all of them. Now the drawback to actually I want to do this. So for instance right here, if you're not sure where something fits in or if it's applicable, one thing you can do, and I realized this the other day when I was doing this, you can actually type in 15 dot, and then you can just go through and see which commands are applicable to your iOS image. So if you're running 15.2, you can do that and then just hit the down arrow, and then you can see every if you're not sure. So I'm running 15.2.4m, so it looks like area sham link was implemented in 15.2 and it's supported in the iOS image that I'm running. So 15.2.4s, so it does look like it's supported. 15.0m, so I know it's going to work. And this is virtual link. Well, I know this was introduced a long time ago, so I know I won't be freaking out when I get to stuff like that. But check out what image or what release that particular capability was released in. So if like 15.2. So if you're running 12.4.15t, you're not going to get this for OSPF Beta 3. So check that out, because that's going to give you a little bit of because then you're going to know what iOS images you're going to have to double check. So for instance 15.3. So there's only let's see, let's go to the top here. There's only 5 particular features that I won't be able to do in GNS3 because of the running to 15.2.4. So 15.3. So BFD deterministic offload, and this, at least in this particular section, and then let's see, IP OSPF filter out, all out. So this command was integrated into, so it was originally introduced in 12.0. So I would check to see which, and I mean basic check will tell you what's going on. So that'll give you the presence of mind and the peace of mind to see, okay, is it applicable, and is it supported? Actually, that was what I was looking for. Is it supported inside of my iOS image? So then you can take what I would do. I would do this on a per protocol basis. I'd go through and take a look, see what all the config is for everyone, know what they are, research them, know what they do, and if you get the ability to, at a later date, go back and test them in an iOS image that's supported, maybe in a rack rental, I would document all of the features that you can't do in a lab environment or anywhere else that you have access to, readily access to. So your lab exam or your lab equipment, GNS3, whatever other type of material, training material or training equipment you might have. Your lab equipment, like I have here at home, obviously doesn't support some of these commands because I'm running 12.4. So I would do that, and then have a running list. Know what they are, have the back information onto them, so that when you go to the do like a rack rental on 15.3 where the capability is there, then you can go in and actually test them out and try them and see how they actually work. And you're not wasting your time testing features you already know. You're spending time testing features that you haven't dealt with or haven't been able to debug. You know, that's what I would do. Now, I spent quite a bit of time on Cisco's website just kind of giving you the lowdown how things work. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take you and show you some of the stuff that I've downloaded when it comes to training material and some of the stuff that you can look at. So the very first thing we're going to do is I'm going to close that window out, and I'm going to go to right here. So what I've done basically is I went through and I went download all the configuration guides, and so like for routing, computer's running a hair slow this morning. I apologize. So we have all the PDF documents that are applicable. So you can go through and open these up and then have the PDF document available. This is my PDF document. So I have the CCIE Quality of Service Exam Certification Guide. So that's one thing that you could definitely, I would definitely have downloaded and checking it out and stuff like that. So just be careful when you're dealing with stuff, because don't get complacent to having this stuff downloaded on your computer and getting to the point where it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't need to worry about trying to find it online because I know what it is and all that good stuff. I would check things out as they come along and stuff like that. So have that available. And GNS3, great tool. Probably my most favorite tool that I use on a regular basis. And that is, my wife actually just sent me a picture on my phone. It's, wow, that is bad. Now there's a cab of a truck is over the median on the interstate. We got some snow last night, so I'm not surprised that there's some accidents. So how would you get the iOS image into GNS3? Well, for one, you can click on Edit, go to Images and iOS Images and Hypervisors, and what I've done is I downloaded from Cisco's website the 7200 series iOS image for 15.2. So once first thing you should do is when you get it, computer's running a little slow here. Actually, I should reboot. Computer's been up and running for a week solid. Alright, so here's all the images that I have downloaded. A lot of these stuff is all end of life, so it's easy to download from Cisco's website. Actually, 90% of them are. I happen to be fortunate that one of the people that I do consulting work for, they wanted to implement a feature that their iOS image didn't support, so I had them get a service contract from Cisco for their router, and with that service contract, it gave me the ability to go in and download the iOS image, and I asked them, and they were cool with me downloading whatever image I wanted to, because of the fact that I'm their Cisco guy. Having a CCNP definitely does help. Having the certification does not gain you automatically the ability to download images. You have to actually have a service contract with Cisco, which is SmartNet, and buy products from Cisco and buy licensing and stuff like that. So down here at the bottom, I have the 7200s. Where is it here? Right here, 15. Right here. This guy right here. It doesn't show it, but it's 15.2, 15.24. So I was able to get that image and go from there. So, and then I just simply implemented it here, and I was able to get it running. It does take 256 mega RAM. So, if your computer doesn't have that amount it doesn't have the capabilities of running a bigger image, definitely try to get an image or a device that can run it. I'm going to be actually updating my memory here. I'm going to go to 12 or 16 gig of RAM here probably pretty shortly, just so that I have the capability of running the bigger, more devices. And quad-core processors work better than dual-core when it comes to GNS3. I found that out when I started running it on a my wife's laptop actually has a quad-core i5 processors, and she's got 8 gig of RAM. It was like a $500 laptop. I was a little surprised, and so I was able to run GNS3 on it. I got to 22 devices, and everything was just clicking right along. So, now granted, they were 3725s running 128 mega RAM, but the simple fact that I had 2.5 gig of RAM chewed up, and the CPU was sitting between 20 and 30%. And I could do debugs and stuff like that. It's already getting to 60 to 70% of the RAM or the memory or on the CPU, but that's all I do. And then close this guy out once you get all this stuff figured out, and then simply drag a device onto the your workspace here. It usually goes a little quicker than that. So my computer needs to be rebooted. It's definitely taking a sweet old time, and I clear this all off so that I have more space to work with. I don't need to know what everything's connected to unless I'm going here. I'm just on a whim, just opening things and configuring and connecting them. So there's the device, and you just right click on it to start it, and up it would come, and then you'd be good to go. But that is pretty much that's what it is. I mean, there's not a whole lot more I can show you to it than that. So just as a quick recap, I would recommend downloading all of the configuration command references in addition to the command references. That's going to bode you a lot of, as a matter of fact, since I'm sitting right here, let me go ahead and just download this. And see, it's going to download the PDF document, and then you can save it wherever you want to. So it's going to download it real quick. I don't have the fastest internet connection. As you can see, most people, they already have it down. And now you can go through and click on like for instance, I want to know what default cost is. And then it's going to take you to what you need to know. And all the syntax description and the 24-bit memory, or 24-bit number, and command introduction, and how to configure it. This is a great training tool. Simple as that. Because then you can simply fire up a router, and you can go in and type in, the command is default cost, area 10, because that's what it's going to be. When you're dealing with this right here, this is the 32-bit area ID, and you can either type it in dotted decimal like this, or in what's the other way you can put it in? You can put it in dotted decimal, or in a straight number like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. As long as it's less than 4.2 billion, which is a 32-bit number, you can type it in this way. So area 10 will be stub, and area 10 default cost is going to be 20. So that's that. So it says the following. I'm doing that. I'm looking at that right. And then area filter list, and you can go through and set this stuff up. And the beautiful thing about the command reference is it gives you all the commands for that level of iOS image. So we're running. Where are we here? This is for. What does it say? We know it's for 15.3 because we're underneath 15.3 right now for the command references. So you can rest assured when you're going through here and pulling information down, you'll be good to go. So another thing is the debug commands. Know what they are. Embedded Event Manager. So I would do both. I would know the command references and the configuration guide. Read through both. So phone started ringing there. Sorry about that. Now let me quickly apologize. I don't want me to sound like I'm trying to beat something into you. I just figure reiteration and repetition will try to. I'm trying to help you as well as myself pass the CCIE on the first attempt. So knowing all the commands, knowing the configurations, that's going to help you out in the long run. So the idea, as you're going through the workbooks for INE, which is what I'll be doing here, I can't wait till INE gets the CCIE version 5 written in lab done for the workbooks and the Advanced Technologies class, because I feel like once I go through the workbooks and I get the ATC course, I feel it's just a matter of time before I pass, really, because I've got the drive to do it. It's just a matter of getting in there and getting it done. So if it sounds like I'm preaching to the choir, or I keep talking about it, it's because of the fact that I think it's a topic that I think needs to be covered, and it's important. So just do your due diligence when it comes to studying. If you're going to spend the amount of money that it takes to become a CCIE and you want to pass in the first attempt, the written exam is $350. The lab exam is $1,500. That's not including your travel expenses to the lab, hotel stay, anything that you might be doing while you're there, and then the flight home. So you might be spending $2,500, $3,000 to go get a certification, and then you may not even pass in your first shot. So if I was you, I'm doing my damnedest to make sure that I give myself every tool I can think of to pass it. So if I'm not sure if I can pass on the first attempt, I'll postpone. I have no qualms about postponing a test. Matter of fact, when I started going after my CCNP, I failed the rod exam the first time I took it, and I realized that I was not ready. Simple as that. And I rescheduled it about a month and a half later, and then I postponed it twice. I went to go take it in, when was that? I went to go take it in September. I postponed it to October, and I took it in the beginning of November. And then a little over a month later, I went and I took the switch exam and passed it. And then after a month after that, I went and took the T-shoot exam and passed it, therefore granting myself the CCNP. So if you're not ready, postpone. No one's going to fault you for that. But make sure once you pass the written that you take the lab within the 18-month window that Cisco requires you. So that is all I have. I'd like to thank you for hanging out with me and listening to me go on and on and on about different things. But I think it's good what I've got going on here. Obviously, none of these videos have been uploaded yet. I'm sitting here talking to you still. So if when you're watching the video and you have questions or concerns, feel free to drop me a line. When I announce the series, I'll go ahead and put a little 2-minute video out as a introduction and what you can expect and how to get a hold of me. Go through YouTube if you need to, or check me out on my through personal email. I definitely look at that. So I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.